This is the Big O Show. This is the Big O Show.
Already starting off on a high note, being the Chicago Bulls on Monday night. Getting some of your questions here before we get to the previews.
Did you disconnect? You're on the other side now.
I'm on the other side? No.
You moved over.
Was I? Oh, no, I didn't disconnect. I walked out of the room to get some more coffee. Maybe they got rid of me and got scared that
that's your better side. That's your better side. Yeah.
This is my good side. I found your bad side. It's not so much finding my good side, it's finding your bad side and making you look bad. Please make sure to hit that like button. That does us a big favor. Daniel says, Jay became a hot shooter with the Heat. Felt like he was a streaky shooter before that. And I think part of this is players like Jay Crowder are much better. They're professionals. And they're much better when they're surrounded by other pros because guys are where they're supposed to be. And so it's amazing the difference when somebody is off by just a little bit, Ira. Like if somebody is not in the right spot, we've seen this before with teams where guys get out of position and then some of these pros that are used to finding a spot, all of a sudden that spot isn't where they're used to having it.
Yeah. And again, it's just a matter of, it's all about fit anyway, Clay. And it's always been about fit in the first place anyway. So I think what you're seeing right now is you're finally seeing pieces that absolutely fit together. And I think that's made a big difference also in the way this has come together versus previous renditions of the Heat. I'm just curious, and this is something, I know I'm getting tangential here a little bit. We've still only seen the core group together. I think it's 16 or 17 games. Clay, do you think we've seen enough of Lowry, Adebayo, Butler, and Hero, the core four, I guess I would call them now, instead of a big three, that you feel totally comfortable about who the Heat are and also what ancillary pieces they need to add in there?
I do. I am. And it was because it clicked so quickly when the season started. That's when I was like, you know what? These guys, they're pros. They know where they're supposed to be. I think where you run into trouble sometimes when it comes to chemistry, it's not that certain guys aren't pros, but when you're fitting in guys who are younger, there are certain things to be learned as far as finding spots on the floor and where certain guys are comfortable. And we've said this before, it's not a coincidence that when Bam Adebayo comes back on the floor, all of a sudden Duncan Robinson plays better. And to a certain extent, vice versa.
That's a good point.
There are two guys who know the spots the other guy is comfortable with. So with this group, I saw enough early on to where I was like, you know what? Just get healthy for the playoffs. They're going to be fine. And I also think there's going to be enough time, and you mentioned this last week, and I thought it was a really good point. There's going to be enough time between that last game of the regular season and when you play your first playoff game, where everybody's going to go into the lab. Spo's going to go in there with his assistants. They're going to come up with these crazy plans, and they're going to go out there on the practice floor, and they're going to implement them. And there's going to be enough time during those practice runs to where guys are able to kind of come around and get used to each other once again, while also figuring out what those new and crazy wrinkles that the first round opponent's going to have to figure out as well. Chase says Dedmon, Strus, all gems. Yeah, I mean, Caleb Martin, we were talking about this before the break. It's finding the right fit of players and finding the right role players. If you go back to that Heat Lakers series in the bubble, I mean, LeBron was great. Anthony Davis was great. But guys like Alex Caruso, like Kentavious Caldwell-Pope was unstoppable at points in that game. I mean, those are the guys who your stars are going to be your stars, and they need to be your stars on your run, but you need the supporting cast to play well. It's not a coincidence, man, that when LeBron started to get disenchanted down here was when Mike Miller was those are the types of guys, which is ironic that now LeBron, if indeed LeBron is the GM of the Lakers, all of a sudden when that deal was made, these role players who were so important, Montrezl Harrell, Kyle Kuzma, guys who were so important to that Lakers championship team are all of a sudden sent out east, and you bring in somebody like Russell Westbrook. So bottom line here, it all matters. It's really important.
And I'll give you another name. A name we didn't mention because he wasn't part of that trade was Alex Caruso.
Huge.
Right. And, we laughed last year. And I know that's when he really emerged as part of that mix. But what he did, that again, when Chicago gave that money, people are like, what are you kidding for a guy like that? And as a matter of fact, if you had to ask me to sort of do comparison players, I would say the Heat's Alex Caruso is Caleb Martin, for example. Does a lot of the hustle kind of stuff, keeps you going, energizes, especially when he plays as a reserve. So when you're talking about reconfiguring this Heat team or upgrading this Heat team, whatever you want to do, no one's ever happy how things are, even when you win a championship. I get that from fans. That's sort of the Caleb Martin role, that you could lose your Alex Caruso. And when the Lakers lost Alex Caruso, the thought was, well, at that kind of money, he's not worth it. And yet you see so many times right now when they're playing Reeves or someone else there, when they're just desperate to get some sort of energy, how much that matters. Yes, this is a stars league. The Heat will go as far as Kyle Lowry and Jimmy Butler and Bam Adebayo and Tyler Hero will take them. But there will be moments when even those 4 players will need other guys to support them.
Yes.
And you see that also. So yes, you're only playing 8, 9 players maximum, maybe even 7 players in the playoffs, but you better surround with quality at every single spot. The Heat did that with LeBron when he was here. They got him Birdman. They got him Battier. They got him Ray Allen. They got him Mike Miller. They were constantly looking for something else a little bit more. The Lakers are the opposite. They've kept, sort of taking players away, stripping players from LeBron. You wind up in a situation now where how crazy is it where LeBron says we just have to get back on track so we can make the play-in, not the playoffs. It's almost like, what was that? Was it Jim Mora? Play-in? We're talking play-in? It's crazy.
I love how your voice got high, just like Jim Mora did too. I mean, being an old school Saints guy, even though he was with the Colts at that point, always brings back good memories. So this week, Ira, you won that game on Monday night, and I said this on the Sunday night show, and I was like, man, did I really just put my foot in my mouth? But I said, look, that game on against Chicago is the easiest game of the week, despite the fact that they're at the time second in the standings, still are, but 2 games back now. That was your easy game this week, mostly because of the matchups. It's not because Chicago isn't a good team. You could see them play one of these other teams. We're talking about styles making fights and beat them in the first round, a team that may match up better with Miami. So as far as the Heat are constructed, I think these next 3 games are the tougher ones, starting tonight against Milwaukee. And how do you see this one playing out, given who is going to be able to play for the Heat and who's not going to be able to play, namely Kyle Lowry?
I think Milwaukee realizes now that they're a couple games back in the standings, that the tiebreaker could and probably will matter to some degree in multi-team ties there at the top of the East. The Heat's up 2-1 in the season series. This is really important for Milwaukee. This is basically a 2-game swing for the Heat. If they win this game, they move up another game on the Bucks in the East, and they clinch the tiebreaker. I think the Bucks realize that. They've been uneven lately. And again, I still think they want to make statements against the Heat. So I think this will be a challenge. And it's interesting because I know everyone's going, well, this is a Giannis Antetokounmpo game. And yet it's Chris Middleton who has killed the Heat over the years. And at the end of a game, Giannis is Giannis. We saw, over the weekend, had a last chance for a last shot against the Nets, wound up missing. He's not the guy you want taking that. So in moments of truth, it very well could be Chris Middleton. Again, without Kyle Lowry, you lose that defensive matchup against Drew Holiday. You're not 100%. Gabe Vincent's done a nice job. So I'd probably say advantage Milwaukee because of their building, because of their desperation, and because the Heat are the team that are shorthanded. I know they don't have Connaughton. They're without him. They're without Brook Lopez, who's been a factor. But I do wonder the way they treated Bam with such a lack of respect in last year's sweep in the finals, where Brook Lopez said, do whatever the hell you want. We don't think you're good enough. I hope that sticks with Bam. And this incredible role that he's on, I hope we can show it again that, hey, ignore me at your own peril, but I am not the Bam Adebayo you saw last May. I'm an aggressive, take it at you, take it to you, Bam Adebayo. So it might take the best of Bam to make this game something, where the Heat can come out with a W.
I'm so glad you mentioned that because I remember being there opening night and seeing Bam just destroy Milwaukee early in that game and being like, oh, he remembers. Yes. He remembers first round of last year. So you're right. I mean, and we see Bam when he's got the chip on his shoulder. Man, he did it against Popovich last week. I mean, he remembers. He does not forget this sort of thing. Like he latches on to disrespect. And I remember it was a Zach Lowe piece where he was kind of doing a long form profile on Bam. And he talked about how Bam was out to dinner with Karl Anthony Towns and then a mutual friend / I think former assistant coach, maybe from Kentucky. And the coach was like, giving Bam a hard time because they were about to play Minnesota coming up the next night, giving Bam a hard time like, that's all right, man. You can't guard Cat. Like, it's okay. You're not there yet. And he said Bam, had this clenched fist and like his foot started tapping, and the next side he went out and absolutely annihilated Cat. Like he just gets these and like
And you need to see it again. And you know what, Clay?
yes.
This is the first night of a back-to-back. So generally, if you want to get one, you want to get this one because you're going to get into Brooklyn pretty late overnight. That's a tough matchup. You're losing an hour. Tonight's an 8 o'clock Eastern start. Tomorrow's 7:30. So you're getting caught in a time crunch also. And everyone is expecting Kevin Durant to be back tomorrow for the Nets. So this might be the one of this 2-game swing that might be a little more prioritized in the Heat's view.
And Ben Simmons is not expected to play, right? He's
not for a while. They want to get
Okay.
past that March 10th game in Philadelphia. They don't want to have an excuse of, oh, Ben can't make it today. As much as Goran was booed yesterday when he went back to Toronto, it'll be that, like Eric Spoelstra would say, 10x in Philadelphia. He does not need in his mental state to come back for that. So I think when Brooklyn comes down to Miami the end of the month, there's a back-to-back. The Heat play Knicks on Friday, Nets on Saturday. I think you'll see the full contingent of Nets. Tomorrow in Brooklyn, no Kyrie. Still, they're loosening the vaccine mandate, but slowly and not in Kyrie's situation. So it'll be mostly KD, but mostly KD has shown over the years he is very capable of winning games on his own.
Yeah, and watch Goran go out there and score 30. So going back to what we were saying about tonight, though, I thought you brought up a good point. I want to circle back to it really quickly. The Heat always find a plan for Giannis, and look, Giannis is great. I mean, he's going to find a way to get his. But when you look at his shooting percentage relative to the rest of the league when he plays the Heat find ways to get him uncomfortable. It's Chris Middleton. It's also Drew Holiday. I mean, those are the two guys that scare me the most. And you mentioned Middleton. I'm going to go towards Holiday because of the other factor that you mentioned, that Kyle Lowry's out. It's going to be really hard. And look, we've all been very pleasantly surprised and impressed by Gabe Vincent. He's not Kyle Lowry when it comes to going up against somebody like a Drew Holiday. And Drew Holiday is one of these guys that you talk to everybody else throughout the league. You talk to other stars, and he is still, I think, viewed as one of the most underrated players in the NBA and one of those guys who elevates his team. So all that to say, if this is a game that the Bucks are truly treating as a desperation type game, the Heat are going to have to come out and match that. And you're going to have to find a way to mitigate what Holiday and Chris Middleton do, in addition to building that wall that Giannis has had trouble with in the past. So let's get past that and go look ahead to tomorrow again. You mentioned that Kevin Durant finds ways to do it by himself because he's just that good of a player. However, PJ Tucker seems to take these things personally with the two of them. They're friends. PJ Tucker has a great relationship with KD's mom. I mean, there's this old school friend. So if you can find a way to let PJ Tucker, just in KD's maybe his first game back, find a way to, you can find a way to where the rest of that roster could win this game. But it's finding a way to slow down Kevin Durant if indeed he does play. It's one of those things, Ira, that's so much easier said than done.
And KD, after a month or so off, could easily put up a 50-burger on you. So it's a matter of what's left of the Nets after that, whether it's Goran, whether it's Patty Mills, whether there's enough there to give him, the remaining 45 at least or so points will be interesting. Again, no Kyrie, so it's different. But again, the Nets you see tomorrow are not the Nets you're going to see in the playoffs. It's just a matter of where does Brooklyn fall. And the thing is, the bottom of the East, as much as we're talking, Clay, all season about the East being competitive, the bottom of the East is pretty terrible. And we're starting to get a pretty good sense of the 5 teams that are not going to make it to the playoffs. We know Detroit won't. We know Orlando won't. We know that Indiana won't. It sure as heck looks like right now that the Knicks won't. So it's only going to take one more team to fall out of the mix definitively, probably Charlotte. And then you're at least going to have the puncher's chance. So again, explaining the play-in. Let's say the Brooklyn Nets wind up 10th. Fine. As long as they beat number 9, Washington, then all they have to do is wind up beating the loser of, say, an Atlanta game against Toronto to wind up getting a playoff spot. Also doable. So I think the Nets, in some form, will be a playoff team just because the bottom of the East is that bad. Unless Charlotte refines their way, you sort of see 5 teams that aren't even close.
C makes a comment. Why does that Milwaukee hotel room look like a jail?
You know, I didn't open the back window because it's so damn cold out there and slushy and snowy. And also, and this is true, we go a little earlier here because sometimes for home games, Clay has to get to shoot around. It's also 8 o'clock in the morning here, not 9 o'clock. So this is Ira literally running to the screen, testing the microphone, making sure I have enough lighting in front of me, which is always key. I have my little ring light there and good to go. And the rest. And also, whenever I'm in a hotel room, I got to make sure that this thing is turned the right way so you don't see the unmade bed behind me. So I'm just glad I'm on the air right now.
I mean, I was going to ask if maybe the Rangers lost a game or something that I missed.
Last two, and we're not talking about that.
You went and destroyed something and ended up getting thrown into a cell, and they're letting you come on TV or on this stream. So comment about Duncan Robinson. They asked, do you think he'll be better come playoff time when the game slows down a little bit? With Duncan, I just feel like is the ball going in? And I know that sounds just so simple. And now I will say, since Bam has come back, I think you've seen more consistency from him. Now that's relative to what he was before, because he still had some struggles. And you wrote about this, Iron, really quickly before we hit the break. Is he the Heat's most polarizing player? Just kind of a breakdown of what you said there, and maybe how you projected.
Yeah, it just, and I meant on social media. I mean, there doesn't seem to be a player that fans either want to be a reserve or not in the rotation at all. And he's polarizing because of who's behind him, because you have Max Strus come off the bench with a nice game the other day. Because, again, if Victor Oladipo comes back, there's not room maybe for a Caleb Martin or a Gabe Vincent. So this isn't all on Duncan Robinson. This is all praise be to the other guys who've stepped up. So, like, I use this name, and I know for maybe more recent Heat fans that don't understand, but I say the Luke Babbitt role. Luke Babbitt twice was with the Heat, would play the first 5 minutes of each half, see if he's hitting shots, not play again. It could be that. But when Eric Spoelstra has time to game plan, he game plans for every specific element of his rotation. And I think in the playoffs, he'll say, well, Team X defends this way, so we'll play style Y to counter that. I think he can make Duncan a more consistent player through game plan in the playoffs. So maybe that's when you see the uptick and the consistency again.
All right, we got a lot more to talk about in the last segment of the show, including Philadelphia. James Harden all of a sudden reborn, and they're championship contenders, or are they? We're going to talk about that and get your questions and comments coming up next right here on Inside the Paint.